Welcome to another edition of Noon Dish, not live. We're recording this a little bit before the normal start time, but you are seeing it a little bit after the start time. And we're also sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity, congruityhr.com / Tar Heels for all your small to mid-sized business needs. They will hook you up. They are local, and they have made a name for themselves. Let them make a name for yourself and your small business. And Johnny T-Shirt, of course, the legends on Franklin Street and online for your Carolina gear. That is Don Callahan. I'm Tommy Ashley. Like I said, Don, we usually skip a week on Noon
Mhm.
Dish, but we just simply could not skip a week this week with all this going on. Sort of break down the importance of the coming weeks for North Carolina football.
Yeah. One, the reason why we wanted to not skip a week, particularly this week, is because we're going to have a guest, Alex Mars, on here, director of high school recruiting at North Carolina. So he's heavily involved, and he'll kind of lay out exactly how heavily involved and what exactly he does for this month of June, which includes a lot of official visits, which he's not too much of a part of, but has a lot of camps, particularly 7-on-7 camps, and then also one-day camps, which he's heavily involved with. And he'll get into that a little bit. But overall, just a general idea of what's going on for North Carolina. We're starting the official visit season. I mean, yes, North Carolina has already hosted one official visit earlier in the spring, and some other recruits have also taken some official visits. But for the most part, the the meat of official visits are occurring in June, starting this weekend, which amounts to basically 4 weekends butts up against the summer dead period. And these 4 weekends are going to heavily dictate where kids commit to. And a lot of those announcements some kids are just going to announce and just going to commit in June. Some will set some sort of announcement dates in July or August, which is what we've seen in the past couple of years. But yeah, I mean, June is the month now when it comes to recruiting, at least high school recruiting in college football.
Yeah, and if folks are watching this, we had Pat Suddas on last week, and we talked about like you just said, the importance of the
Yeah.
month of June, especially with the raised up signing day. And there's some discussion maybe next year having a signing day in June. Just a ton going on this time of year. High schools are out, kids can go camp in North Carolina. It's going to be an interesting weekend. Something I thought about. If camps are starting in Chapel Hill this weekend, there's also a little baseball being played in Chapel Hill as well, which folks that know the
Parking's
campus,
going to be a pain.
folks that know the campus know that the football facilities and the baseball field are there locally. And LSU's coming to town in baseball. Chapel Hill is going to be on fire this
Is there a
weekend. So
baseball game on Sunday?
there would be a baseball game, at
Yeah.
least two baseball games on Sunday. So
Wow.
it is going to be a little hectic in Chapel Hill. So
Rams Head parking lot's going to be a busy place.
it's going to be nuts, and I think all across campus. I think the baseball parking spread out. Rams Head is going to be like $20 when it's normally 10, and then there's some free options across campus. Point being, if you're coming to Chapel Hill for a baseball game, get there early. If you're coming to Chapel Hill for a camp, do not wait until the last possible minute to arrive because you'll probably be hunting a parking space. Don, before we go, a couple things we're not going to do today. You mentioned Alex Mars. We're going to talk to him, and that's going to be a great interview coming up. But also, we're not doing a top five because we're not
Mhm.
live. So, folks watching this, get in your top five ideas for us next time. And then chat MVP. We'll announce our chat MVP next time for when we do a live show. So a little bit different setup here. But Don, a couple other things before we get in to the Alex Mars interview is you've had some scoops drop, and
Yeah.
folks holler for Don. They want mock class Don to come in, and certainly we're not going to spoil it here, but sort of talk about what mock 2.0 involved in you putting that together.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I've expressed before, where I have my own personal sort of mock class that I run. I've mentioned my Google Keep that I use. That's just a notepad, and I kind of keep who's committed, who I expect to commit on these spots, how many spots I expect I guess numbers for each position and kind of update it throughout just whenever I get a chance, sort of thing. But when it comes to actually doing the mock class, I get down to the nitty gritty, get my list of questions, talk to a bunch of different sources. I made the mistake of doing a lot of this over the holiday weekend, where obviously a lot of people, sources, are not going to be willing to answer their phone when they see Don Callahan pop up. But and I ended up stumbling across a bunch of information that I didn't expect, as far as, where North Carolina is at with certain guys. Certain guys might be off the board, that sort of thing. So all that was in the weekly scoop that by the time you listen to this has already been published. And so it's a great sort of, I don't know, like a checkpoint, I guess, heading into the busy June month. So you can kind of see where things are at, where things are kind of trending. Obviously I'm never going to be 100%. I don't think I've been 100% yet on any of these mock classes, but I have a pretty good hit rate. And in some of these situations, it's like, as if signing day were today, this kid would end up in North Carolina, this kid would not. But then you take, 2-3 official visits, things change. You know what I mean? And so I don't necessarily have a crystal ball, so I can't predict those different things. But that's the beauty of the mock class. And I think if you're really into recruiting, it's a good little gauge of just where things are sitting as we head into this busy month.
Yeah, it is a snapshot of the current situation.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
we know in the internet world and today's world, the current situation at this very moment could be very different than the current situation right now.
Yes, absolutely.
It changes that fast. Don, what is your hit rate, just out of curiosity? I'd be interested to know.
So
Mach 1.0, Mach 2.0, Mach 3.0, and however deep you go. What are your percentages
so
on those?
The unfortunate thing is with the sped up recruiting calendar, last year I only got a chance to put out 2 mock classes. I'm feeling like I'll be able to put out 3 this cycle. I would like to put out more. It's just recruiting, even though it's not like transfer portal recruiting where things happen within a couple of days, things happen so quickly. I think, though, looking back, I probably could have done one a little bit sooner, kind of got this rock and roll a little bit sooner. But as far as the hit rate is concerned, there was a couple years ago, somebody took some shots at me for my projections, mostly because most fans, they want to, if they're going to do a mock class, they're going to throw in all the top recruits on there. And I try to be as realistic as possible. And I don't, and there might be times where, hey, I'm like, okay, this is a big time kid. I don't know if I'm ready yet to take that dive, because once you take that dive, it's a lot harder to kind of pull it back, later on. And so, yeah, I might kind of veer on the side of caution, but really at this stage of the recruiting process, I feel like we have enough information to make a well-educated guess on where these kids are leaning. I mean, hell, and some of these kids have even told you, who their leader is and that sort of thing. So, but so a couple years ago, someone took some shots at my credibility, and Ben Sherman came to my rescue, my hero, and actually went back and looked and pulled up some of the prior ones from prior seasons and compared it to the actual classes that North Carolina signed, and the hit rate was pretty high. Now, some of it is like, yeah, like North Carolina has 10 commitments right now, and probably might add half of that, or might double the class. So, I'm already batting 500 just by, guessing. And probably by guessing, I'm probably batting 75%. But I like to think that there are little nuggets here and there when you look at this stuff where you might say, oh, I didn't think North Carolina was in such good shape for this guy. Or, oh, I didn't know this guy was, so much on North Carolina's radar. Or maybe, you felt really good about this guy, and I say, hey, I get it, but this is what has kind of happened, or this is what's behind the scenes, or, his uncle's really involved in his recruitment. His uncle's a Florida State fan. Those sort of things, I hope, are kind of worth your time in reading the mock class. But I don't think I really need to do much selling of it, because I believe it's probably my the I guess the piece of content that I put together that people look forward to the most.
Yeah, a couple things. One, these podcasts are free. Um, Don's premium content is not. And if you're still watching this and you're not a Tar Pit Premium message board or Inside Carolina Premium person, you need to get on the board. I know this is a sales job, but it's worth the price of admission for Don's mock class, and that doesn't include all the other stuff. We had Jason Staples on the show yesterday where we talked about the scouting reports for the current players. Those type things are worth the price of admission. Don is another thing that is, and then there's that other game they play, that basketball game, the round ball that they play. That the content there is just incredible with Sherelle and the coast to coast crowd and all that with the recruiting stuff. And Lord knows that never ends either, not this day and age. Speaking about recruiting, but Don, let me ask you one more question before we start leaning towards who our guest is going to be. Do you have a thin skin when people come at you? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but
No,
honestly though, doesn't it kind of bites sometimes when
it
somebody's
doesn't
comes
like
in.
the thing I guess I struggle with the most is not being able to fire back. You know what I mean? And kind of accepting. That's why you will never see me actually respond to people on Twitter. And I never understand when people say, "Oh man, my Twitter timeline is so terrible," and I look at it and it drives me nuts. I'm like, "Well, why do you look at it?" And I see certain things. There was, I see it and then I kind of just whatever. I've already accepted my mind, I'm not responding. There was some stuff with some NC State, one of the I don't know writers or whatever or whatever the bloggers. I don't even know who it was, and I think it was a UNC fan, and somehow I got tagged along in it, and so I just stayed completely out of it. Didn't even really read what was being said or who was actually involved and that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, when someone's like, I think the issue a couple years ago was that I say that UNC has smaller classes, and my thing is like, well, when I predict the size of the class, it's almost always correct. And yeah, there is some fluctuation based off of what happens, beyond today. But, I'm not trying to skimp out on, North Carolina, who they might sign or how many they might sign and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? So I think just being able to fire back sometimes, or just people just being unreasonable about it. And some of it is like we kind of created a beast in a way as far as just our coverage and what we had. The one thing that kind of irked me a couple weeks ago was the situation of running back for North Carolina in this class changed like literally that morning that I was spending the entire morning working on my weekly scoop. So I didn't have a chance to check Twitter or check with sources or anything like that. I was trying to get the scoop all together. And then of course, some people kind of called me out on it. And I'm just like, dude, the weekly scoop is a beast. I mean, look how many words it is. And so it just can't be, it's going to be outdated at times, and like this information kind of came out like an hour before I was posted, and that's kind of irritating because it's like, look at everything else that's covered. Or I'll report on like 12 guys, and North Carolina's recruiting 13, and someone's like, well, what about this 13th guy? It's like, come on. We have coverage on on the 12 other guys in North Carolina's heavily recruiting, some exclusive information here, and you're worried about the one guy who I wasn't able to get any sort of additional information on, and that's kind of irritating. But as far as like, I don't let it bother me, as far as like affecting me beyond that moment. So I would think I have I would think I have thick skin, but I'm going to have an opinion off of, people have an opinion on me sort of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes back to what we were talking about is that it changes immediately.
Yeah.
And it's tough to get people's own teenagers to do what they're supposed to do consistently and on time and all that. And then you're dealing with, like we talked with Sudis last week, 400 to 500 to 600 people that are involved in a potential recruiting class. I mean, it's just insane. But I think you do a great job, Don.
Thank you, Tommy.
I'm
going to give you a hug when I see you next.
If I don't say it enough, I mean, I think you do a wonderful job. So we're going to go to our interview now. We're going to bring in our special guest, and we'll be right back when we do that.
All right, we are back, And join with us is Alex Mars, Director of High School Relations at North Carolina, which is a position that you took, what was it, about 2 years ago? Is that right?
It would have been the winter of 2022.
Okay. All right. So give or take 2 years. So exactly what is your job at North Carolina? What does the Director of High School Relations do?
So basically, I'm what some people would call the middle guy. So I try to relay info to high school coaches, and then a bunch of coaches can send me recruit names. I'll send them to our recruiting staff. Our recruiting staff can get them evaluated. I'll also watch them. And then that way we can try to go through the chain of command up to the assistant coaches, coordinators, and hopefully to Coach Brown. But basically, I relay to like when the clinics, y'all are always welcome to practices. Spring is easier than fall, obviously. I send them summer camp info. I just try to keep them engaged as much as possible to make them feel welcomed and make them always feel like they can reach out to me and to the UNC football office. So basically, I try to make all the coaches happy.
So I didn't realize that you were actually involved to that degree with recruits as far as, so I guess the high school coaches, if they say we have these 3 guys, they send them to you and then you kind of send it to the staff.
Yeah, so I'll watch them and then I kind of do. I mean, I've been in this profession now for, gosh, almost 8 years. It seems like I just started. But I've been around football all my life. I feel like I'm a true, decent evaluator of what we need, what we don't need, who's got a chance, who doesn't. If I watch them and I'm like, if I'm not wowed or something's not impressive in like the first 3 minutes, I'm kind of off. But then if it's like he's got a chance, I'll send it to them. They'll evaluate them, and then we'll kind of discuss our notes on the kid.
Okay. Now you're also involved with the camp stuff coming up next month, right?
So I have the privilege of being the summer camp director. So I'm
Okay.
in charge of all the camps, from 1-day camps, summer specialist camps. We're doing 4 7-on-7s this year, and a quarterback camp this year. So
okay. So I definitely want to get more into that, and that's the whole reason why we brought you on right before June starts. But I did want to kind of get your background, and I feel like for what you described to me as what the director of high school relations does, you're almost kind of perfect for it because you played at North Carolina. Obviously, you kind of worked up the ranks. You played high school football in the state of North Carolina. Your dad, he's still coaching at Reedsville, right?
We every year I think the man's going to retire, and here we are going on year 45. So
okay,
Wow.
so yeah, and one of the most well respected. Every time I'm at a clinic or some sort of coaching event, high school coaching event, I always see your dad. And always has all the coaches talking to him and that sort of thing. So just kind of what kind of can you kind of take us through your path, because you started off, you walked on at North Carolina, and how do you get from walk on to now being in this position?
So I actually played high school football in Virginia.
Oh, really? Okay.
I went to Graham High School. Some people may know Ahmad Bradshaw, that was the running back for the New York Giants. That's kind of our claim to fame, is at Graham High School.
So you did not go to Reedsville?
I did not go to Reedsville. So I went to Graham High School in a small town called Bluefield, which is right between Bristol and Blacksburg, Virginia. And then the moment I got down here, my dad coached one more season, my freshman year here at Carolina, and then retired. So he was in Virginia for 32 years, and he's been at Reedsville ever since.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, I played for my dad in high school. He was the head coach, played center and defensive end, and also deep snapped. And then it got to the point where I was trying to figure out what I was going to do in college. Was I going to be an offensive lineman? Was I going to do strictly deep snapping? I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time. And it got to the point where I started figuring out that I wasn't very big. Because in fact, when I was in college, my roommates were James Hurst, Russell Bodine, and Landon Turner. And they're all ginormous compared to me. So I was like, yeah, I have no chance. And I wanted to play big boy football at Power 5 level, and deep snapping was my end. And so I had the privilege of having my dad teach me everything I needed to know. And he also helped my cousin be a deep snapper at Tennessee. And I had another deep cousin that deep snapped at West Virginia. So you could say the Mars family have a bloodline of deep snappers. So, but yeah, played here from 2010 to 2014. I had just graduated, tore my Achilles before the bowl game my senior year, and that was the good Lord's way of telling me I'm done. And, being around a high school coach for, at the time, it was 20 years, 21 years. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is my passion. I've been around it my whole life. I want to get in it. And like everybody else in America, I emailed every single coach. My first email was actually to Hawaii. Here it's the year 2024, and I'm still waiting on them to email me back. So didn't get any responses from people, or if I did, it was all volunteer. And so I went with Coach Fedora. I sat down with him and I said, Coach, I got a couple of options to be a volunteer coach. And he said, so they're not going to pay you. And I said, no, sir. He said, well, why don't you just stay here? You already know everybody for no money. And so I did that. I stayed here for 2 years on unpaid volunteer, working with the offense, and then made my way to a QC. Got kept on when Coach Brown got here, and now I've been doing this.
I wanted to ask you, and we're talking with Alex Mars, Director of High School Relations for North Carolina football, and Mack Brown. Alex, you talk about your history, not only growing up with a high school football coach, but also playing for Carolina. How much easier does that make your job as sort of the face for high school coaches for North Carolina football, having all that experience in the game, in the high school game, but also being around it so much, but then also being a Carolina guy?
I mean, it's easy for me. I mean, I bleed Carolina blue. I met my wife here at Carolina. If we had a beach house, that thing would be Carolina blue. I mean, I always think I'm passionate about Carolina blue, but she's on a whole different. And, but yeah, like in talking to high school coaches, it's second nature to me. I've been talking to one my entire life, and I've been surrounded by all of his high school coaches that he's coached with, coached against. And I've built relationships even when I was a QC all the way up until now. And I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are still coaching in this state that I've known for 10 plus years. And it's very easy for me to talk to them.
So one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me on what you said, which is, you aren't the only one who has kind of done this, but how do you go 2 years without getting paid? Like, how do you survive?
Thankfully, my mom and dad were able to financially provide for me, and I will forever be indebted to them. My dad always says, as long as you owe me, I'll never be broke. I was very fortunate. They paid for my apartment, my utilities. I had an allowance still at the age of 21. So it was very hard. I mean, I had to be absolutely frugal with my money. And that's probably why I'm still frugal with my money now, just because I remember what it was like. And, but it was hard. It was a grind. You never knew when your opportunity was going to happen. And that's what I have to tell a bunch of people that want to get up at this level. I mean, you have to be willing to do it. If they can't give you any money, you have to be willing to volunteer if you can afford it financially, just to get your foot in the door and just do the work, impress them, and you get a chance. So, in fact, I don't know if you remember Clay Browning, but Clay, we were going into the 2017 season. It was June. I was on the golf course with my dad, and I got a call from Coach Cap. He said, "Do you want the QC job?" I said, "What are you talking about? Clay's still the QC." Well, Clay just took the Elon tight ends job, and I said, "Yeah, I want it." So I had been with Cap and Coach Heck and all them for 2 years. They felt comfortable with me. They knew I would work hard, and thank gosh that job came available.
Yeah, the last time I saw Clay, I believe he was an assistant coach at Grimsley High School. Is he still there?
He still is.
Okay. Yeah, because I know he coached at Elon for a while there. I imagine, going back to my initial question, just because this fascinates me, because I can't imagine how difficult that is. But when you really don't have a whole lot of money, I imagine it makes it easier to kind of grind, right? Because might as well just stay all day in the football office kind of working, right?
Yeah, and in fact, that was about the only way I was going to eat for free.
Yeah.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I took full advantage of that.
Yeah.
And thankfully, my wife at the time had a job because she's an orthopedic nurse practitioner over at the hospital next door. So thank gosh she had some money so that we did go out. We were good. But yeah, I mean, I got here early, left late, and, just until I got my opportunity.
And I bet you have to have a wife/girlfriend who is very understanding of and supportive of what you're trying to do.
yeah, she's been very supportive through all of this. I told her from the get go, I said, this job's not going to be easy. I'm going to be gone a lot. There's not going to be a lot of times where we can go do things. And she's been completely understanding of it the entire time. And even now we have a 9-month-old daughter, and she's been perfect and has been a trooper. So I'm very grateful for her.
Okay. So Tommy touched on this a little bit, but as far as like growing up with a high school coach as your dad, I imagine he's probably been a high school coach as far back as you can even remember. How has that kind of helped you kind of do the job that you're doing?
First off, like I said, just building relationships with people I wouldn't probably necessarily talk to. Even when I was young. I mean, like I said, I have known a bunch of these coaches that are still coaching today for almost my entire life. And but one of the things that he's kind of helped me with is when to bother coaches. Like, we all have jobs, and a lot of people like to hammer coaches from August to December. That's y'all's time to coach football. That's your time to do your thing. I'll send the good luck text. I'll send the congratulations on the win. Do you want to come to a game? Things like that. But I do not bother them from August to December, because I know they got more things than they can deal with. And so I try not to be that burden on them. But, he helps me. I mean, he's an English teacher, so he's one of those guys that actually checks for grammatical errors on letters that I send, or use whom, or when to use lay or lane, which I haven't had to use that in a letter yet. But just like things that I wouldn't even have thought of, like, hey, you should have your graphic guys make like a hydration chart and send it out, because a bunch of schools don't have those, or some schools don't even have a height chart. And we made probably 1,000 of them. I mailed them all out 2 years ago, so they all had like a UNC logo height chart, as much as I can get posted in their buildings that say Carolina football. Just like the occasional motivational graphics, or just I handwrite letters to every single coach in the state of North Carolina. There's
wow,
there's 400 schools.
Yeah.
Handwrite all of them good luck letters before the season starts. And so I try to be personable, transparent. He says, don't ever lie to them. Be truthful. I mean, as much as it pains you to say their kid can't play here, you got to say it. And that's probably the hardest part I've had to deal with, is a guy that I've has been in my corner for a while to say, Coach, I'm sorry, he can't play here. But at the end of the day, they're human beings. They understand, and it's been good.
Alex, you talk about the 400 or so in North Carolina. How many high school coaches do you deal with on I don't want to say a daily basis, but like a seasonal basis? How many do you actually touch? Because I don't think people understand, and I asked Pat Sotis this last week about the number of kids per recruiting class, but I don't think people fully understand how many people we're talking about here that you have to deal with, and you're talking about it on a personal level, handwritten notes, those type things.
So I don't know if Pat touched this, but our recruiting footprint is technically like the southern part of Maryland all the way down to the Georgia-Florida line. And then if there are kids that we're recruiting, like in Tennessee, which Gene Robinson in Germantown, and some other schools, like, I'll reach out to them. But I mean, there's at least 300 some plus in Virginia. There's like 250 schools in South Carolina, and there's a ton in Georgia. So excuse me, I try to read. Sorry about that. I try to reach out to them as much as possible. Like I said, we're doing 4 7-on-7s. I've got 80 teams coming, 20 each day. I've been talking to them from March all the way to now. But I try to stay in constant contact during the off season, and then once the season starts, I kind of just back up a little bit and just send the good luck, congratulations, and things like that.
Okay, so this is definitely your, I guess, busiest part of your year then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
which you kind of lead me into my next question. What does this preparation look like? I mean, I imagine you're not starting today. You've probably been starting months ago. But as far as the camps, what's kind of that preparation look like for you?
So as soon as the season's over, I sit down with Pat, and then I go to Coach Brown and I say, Coach, here's the projected summer camp timeline that I have. Do you agree with it or disagree with it? More times than not, Coach Brown agrees with it. And so I kind of get the ball rolling on that a little bit, but then keeping in mind that I've got the clinic first. So
That's
as
right.
soon as January hits, I try to find a speaker. I try to get graphics sent out as soon as possible so that they're up to date and aware ahead of time. And then I start hammering coaches. I text everybody from Virginia all the way down to Georgia. Hey, do you want to come to the clinic? Do you want to come to the clinic? And then after the clinic's over, then I put all my focus on summer camp. So once our clinic was over, I want to say the 22nd, 23rd of March, that 24th of March, I was already on camps. And we opened up registration April 1st. And so I've been looking at camp stuff for the last 3 months now.
So is for the and I know the 7-on-7 is different than the one-day camps. So for the one-day camps, is it more or less just kind of putting together the the schedule and then sending out the registration? Because obviously you guys can't really like officially invite people. So it's a matter of just kind of monitoring the registration I guess list or whatever for the one-day camps.
Correct. So we use a company that they put all of our info on there between the timeline, the price, all the forms they have to fill out, and then they register online. And then I can see who all's registered.
Okay.
I can make a PDF, Excel document, and go through all the kids. I'll send them to our recruiting staff. They'll send it and watch all the kids. They'll watch 5 to 10 clips, highlight who we need to keep an eye on, things like that. But in fact, you can send out the 26's camp stuff as long as it's pertinent to camp stuff.
Okay.
You can text them to invite them to camps.
Gotcha. So it definitely is, because I always get the questions like, how do I get my kid, North Carolina interested and all that sort of stuff. And I always say, go to the college camps, not just for North Carolina, but you also end up having a bunch of, the group of 5 schools and FCS schools that come and watch and all that sort of stuff. But if, I sign up my kid, he's only a month old, and you already, as soon as he signs up, you're getting the information on him and all that sort of stuff, and actually investigating him a little bit. I say you, but I mean the staff.
Yeah, we're capped out on our Sunday one-day camp already.
Yeah.
And have been for 3 weeks now. And so as soon as we got capped, I sent it over to our recruiting staff, and they started evaluating every single kid. And then quarterback camp, we've already capped out at that one, and I've already sent that over to them, and they've started evaluating the kids. So they're on top of their stuff as soon as I give them the Excel document.
So speaking of the quarterback camp, besides it being just for quarterbacks, how different is it compared to just the one-day camp?
There's 2 meetings involved, so we haven't really gotten into full detail what we're going to do in those meetings, but they're going to register that morning. We'll go straight into a quarterback meeting, kind of like how our quarterback coach would with our quarterbacks. So he'll go over defensive identification, just the bare minimum, identifying coverages, whether it's cover 4 or cover 3. And then the second meeting is going to be technique, fundamentals, things to work on, so on and so forth. And we'll have 2 throwing sessions, and then we'll end with a competition. But, we did this camp way back when. I loved it. I thought we had some of the best quarterbacks come. You got to evaluate them. They threw for 2 straight hours, got a break, and threw for 2 more hours. You got to see who was tired, whose arms gave out, who could still spin it. So they get to do a lot of throwing. Now, it's not to moving targets, but we can still check their accuracy. How's their footwork? How's their arm mechanics? Things like that. So I like that camp a lot. So I'm pretty excited that we brought that back this year.
Yeah, I was excited to see it. And I remember, I know you can't talk about current recruits, but I remember Drake May was there as, I think, maybe like a 9th grader. Sam
was here.
Sam was there. Tons of other guys who end up playing other places also were there. It was, really who's who.
Gunnar Stockton, that's at Georgia. There was a ton of kids.
Yeah.
We always had kids from 12th grade all the way to 9th grade that were coming.
Okay. So I got to ask you about 7-on-7s. Those happen to be my favorite ones, especially for a while. You guys have always done some sort of 7-on-7, and there were some years I'd come and I look at I'm just being honest, and I look at the teams and I'm like, this is going to be a tough day for me. But you guys really, the last couple of years have had some. It's almost like I'd pay just as a fan a ticket to some of these, Providence Day, the last couple of years. I'm going blank on a bunch of the other teams that were really, really impressive. What kind of goes into, like, how much is it for you guys, like, teams signing up, and how much of it is it you inviting teams, or how much is it of you kind of kind of pushing teams to kind of sign up? Because like I said, you've had some really good teams the last couple of years.
So what my process is this: once the camp dates are finalized, I try to immediately invite schools that have either come in the past or schools that I think have potential prospects.
Okay.
And then I try to get that filled up as much as possible. And then the reason why I added a fourth day this year is we did 3 last year, and I had 50 teams on the wait list.
Wow.
And I said, I can't keep doing this. It's sometimes usually the same teams because they sign up late. Because I was completely booked by April 1st this year, and I have, look at my board, I've got like 30 teams on the wait list still. But I don't want to do 7-on-7s every day. I love 7-ons because once game 1 starts, it rolls. I mean, it's smooth transitions. Everybody knows what they're doing. A bunch of these schools have done it 3, 4, 5 years in a row. They know the routine. It's really your opportunity to get some of the best prospects on campus, because this day and age, prospects that have offers, they won't come to one-day camps because there's no need.
Yeah.
But you can get them to come with their team for 7-on. And what we also do is we do O-line, D-line camp. So it's more encouraging, more inviting to say, hey, coach, you can bring your whole team that day so that they're all there and they're all working out. Those are my favorite camps. I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
We have been talking with Alex Mars, Director of High School Relations for Carolina Football. Alex, it's been a pleasure to hear you sort of open the curtain up onto how this stuff works with North Carolina football. And I know the people that watch this and are part of Inside Carolina will love to hear it. Let me ask you the biggest question I have. How much sleep do you get in the month of June?
So I told my wife, I said, I'm trying to get as much sleep as I can until Sunday, because once Sunday hits, it's on. And then once that June 20th camp is over, my heartbeat hopefully goes back down to 50 beats. Because it's just, you just never know. Like last year, we had rain on two of the 7-ons, and I had teams back out that day. And so it's always a revolving door and always trying to make sure everything's even. Because I split teams up into 3 pods. I try to make sure they don't play anybody in their conference. I make sure they don't play anybody that's in their general vicinity area. So, like, I try to keep the Charlotte schools split up. I try to keep all the Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Raleigh schools split up. And when teams back out the day of, it becomes quite chaotic for me. So I always expect for the worst and hope for the best. So.
Absolutely. You expect for the worst, you're never disappointed, right?
No. I've done this now for 3 years, so I think I'm prepared.
Well, that's pretty awesome. It's great to hear from you. Appreciate you taking the time to join us. Of course, you've educated me a ton. Don knows all this stuff, or at least says
well,
it
no,
does.
he educated me a ton. So Alex, I really appreciate you coming on, because I know you have plenty to do. So I appreciate you coming on with us.
I appreciate y'all having me on here. This was a good time.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Take care. Don, it's fascinating, man.
Yeah.
The stuff. So with college football coming out in July, the recruiting aspect of it, I think a lot of people lose thinking about how actually difficult this stuff is, and the work that goes into it. We've talked to Alex White, we've talked to Pat Suttis, and now we've talked to Alex Mars. I mean, I'm not just saying it because it's Carolina. I'm saying it in general, and it's across the country. These people work their ass off.
Oh, yeah.
To do
it's
this
definitely
stuff.
A labor of love, for sure.
And he talked about working for, a while for nothing.
Yeah. Yep. No, I mean, I learned a lot. And as you know, I've been covering camps at North Carolina. I've been doing this for 20 years. It hasn't been all 20 years I've covered camps, but it's been at least 15 years I've been covering camps. And fascinating to me, just certain aspects of this. This was definitely more of, I felt like the timing was great to have Alex on. And but I definitely, in my mind, I had a lot of questions I definitely want selfishly be answered because I was curious about, and so hopefully, the listeners and watchers are enjoying these sort of guests that we have on, because I think you can learn a lot. I mean, everybody knows if you follow UNC football, you know Pat Sudis, and you probably know Alex White. But I do think, guys like Alex Mars, who has a very integral role in UNC recruiting and the football team, it's fascinating, and it gives you some really good insight. So, I hope we have some additional people on who you might not be quite familiar with, but can at least give you a good glimpse of what really kind of goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And if folks are watching this and have any doubt about the importance of high school relations, and especially having the relationships with the coaches and things like that, all you got to do is look back over the many years when recruiting in the state of North Carolina, for example, went a little sideways. Those relationships are a main part of that. Like he talked about, having the ability to be able to tell a coach this kid can't play here, or have a coach
Tough.
be honest and say this guy's going to be good one day. I don't know what he's showing on the field, but having those different dynamics going on, it's fascinating to me.
And that's, and I talk to a lot of high school coaches. A lot of my conversations are off the record, and I've gone into high schools where they've had very, very positive things to say about North Carolina. And I've had lots of complaints kind of thrown in my direction about North Carolina, and other schools too. It's, it's just, you're dealing with so many people. You're not going to keep everybody happy, but for the most part, being honest, I think, is all what these coaches want. They just want to know, hey, are you just kind of stringing my kid along, forcing him to make visits unnecessarily, spending time and all this sort of stuff where he could probably be using it on, another school. So it's important to have those conversations to say, hey, look, your guy can't play here. So he can at least tell his player, hey, look, go look at this school, go look at that schools. And also to give the proper sort of feedback. Like, is it that they can't play at North Carolina, or they aren't ACC level kid, or are they, even FBS level kids sort of thing, And I think, from my experiences talking to high school coaches, that's what they want. So I'm glad Alex kind of touched on that. The one thing that kind of seems crazy to me, and I imagine it's completely necessary. So I'm going to ask you, do you think that you could write 400 handwritten letters to the high school coaches in North Carolina?
Could I do it? Yeah. Could they read it? That'd be questionable, especially after like a couple hundred. I mean, we've seen some memes and some Twitter stuff about other schools, and they use the pre-printed letter, and it looks handwritten, but words are changed and all. But yeah, that alone. One thing about my dad is he would write everything handwritten, and the personal touch though is what nails it. And he said he does it to everybody. That's a lot. I can't write worth a darn, and nobody teaches how to write anymore. But yeah, the personal touch is where it's at.
I do remember this was a really, really long time ago. I went to I think ECU had, I think it was a 7-on-7, and I was just there, and I made it known. I think I might have been still kind of. I mean, I've always covered UNC for Inside Carolina, but there was a point where I also kind of helped out cover this region, but I can't remember what my capacity was. Maybe there was just some UNC recruits there. But anyway, the point is met Howard Robinson, who I had known before because he was a high school coach, longtime high school coach at Williamston High School. I think he won a couple state championships while there, but once he stopped coaching, he headed into roles similar to what Alex Mars has. And I remember a couple weeks after I attended, and I just had a quick conversation with him again. I had dealt with him because he's also very heavy in the Shrine Bowl when he was a high school coach. So I dealt with him a lot with that. But he wrote me a handwritten note, and I have that note somewhere still on ECU letterhead and all that sort of stuff. I thought it was kind of cool that one, he would think to do that, and that he would spend the time to do that. And it definitely resonated with me. So I thought that was, pretty cool. So yeah, so it does make an impact. And those are the sort of things that I guess Alex is kind of in charge of at North Carolina.
Yeah. And the last point I'll make on it and this goes across the board, across any walk of life, is if you tick off one person, they talk to other people.
Yeah.
And it's the old college dating thing, if you do somebody over wrong, well, they got friends, and those friends have friends, and so it's a fine line you have to walk, and it's a relationship type thing that they have to build. And to your point early, he's been around it. His dad's one of the best in the business for 45 years,
Yeah.
and he's got that Carolina tie. I was going to ask between him and Hurst and Bodine and who do you say, Landon Turner?
Uh-huh.
Who had the biggest grocery bill? Good
Oh,
heavens. Them some
man.
big men in that house.
Better hope the sport teams
I would
in
not,
that
I was
are
going to say
in
I would
force.
not want to be on the first floor if they were
Yeah.
on the second floor apartment.
Yeah, I hope there weren't bunk beds involved.
Them dudes
You
are
wouldn't want the bottom bunk.
I'll never forget. Not going to call any names, but I was in college at Carolina, Don, and we went to the Chinese buffet out there on 15501 going towards Durham. I don't even know if it's there anymore. And I had offensive lineman friends, and we got kicked out because they ate too much at the
Oh gosh.
$6.99 buffet or whatever it was way back then. I was like, I'm not eating much.
Yeah.
You get out. So anyway, anything left before we get out of here on this not live noon dish that's dropping on a Thursday, not at noon, but Thursday morning. But it's been a
So-
fun and it's been a worth it show.
Yeah, so we definitely intend on having more noon dishes for the month of June, but we're still kind of working out that schedule. We might have to do stuff like this where we don't go live, and just kind of drop it at a certain point. Just because, some of those, I think one Wednesday there is a 1-day camp, and I think the 2 other Wednesdays there are 7-on-7 camps that Alex was talking about. So, I don't know. I always think it would be cool to maybe do one, do a noon dish live from maybe the practice fields, but a lot of logistics would have to work out for that. But yeah. So basically, my whole point of this is just saying we are going to have more noon dishes. We just don't know what it looks like for June, but it's going to have a lot of information because, as I said, North Carolina has 3-4 official visitors this weekend. When I checked this morning, it was about 11 that next weekend, another handful the weekend after that. And then the last weekend, there'll be probably, that's probably the weekend that's probably most up in the air as far as numbers are concerned, but there should be some official visitors at last weekend also. And these official visits to North Carolina and other schools, that's what's going to determine where kids go. So we will have plenty to talk about. We'll have some camp stuff, some 7-on-7 stuff. Hopefully, Tommy might be able to help out some, and so hopefully I get to see his smiley face. So yeah, plenty. June is going to be busy, and we're going to cover it as such.
Yeah. So stay tuned to Inside Carolina. Stay tuned to the Tar Pit Premium message board for Don Callahan. Scoops, mock classes, camp reports, 1-day camp, 7-on-7, all that good stuff. Stay tuned to it all, and we'll be back with a noon dish when we get a chance. Better yet, stay tuned to Johnny T-shirt or stay cool with Johnny T-shirt. Shop there and congruityhr.com/Tar Heels for your free assessment. Don, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, Tommy.